Continuing through the lowest rated movies on IMDb, we reached number 26, Baby Geniuses. Why did I do this to myself? I watched it streaming for free on the Roku channel, which is wrong because subjecting somebody to watch this should be forbidden by the Geneva Convention. Can you tell whether or not I liked it? I've seen, how many? 35 films from this series. 35 of the worst of the worst. I'm used to some awful stuff. I'm expecting some awful stuff. But it takes real skill to make something so bad that it becomes this thoroughly unpleasant to watch. Even the 365 Days movies, while I still consider them to be worse than this, are at least easier to watch. I thought the worst thing a movie could be was boring, like how the second 365 Days movie is boring, in addition to many other things. But this one made me question that idea. I admit I was never bored, because this movie just kept consistently insulting my intelligence. At least if I was bored, my mind could wander and I'd think of something else. Not to say 365 Days didn't insult my intelligence, but at least it was subtle about it. Anyway, let's get into the background. It all started when producer Stephen Paul was at a Barney's clothing store and he saw two parties entering, each with a baby. Those two babies gravitated toward each other and started conversing in gibberish. And to Paul's amazement, they gave off the impression that they understood what the other was saying. And that got him thinking that talking babies equals money. I'd say I have no idea what he was smoking when he thought that, but doing the research of, well, mostly just finding things that confirm what's on the Wikipedia page, I was reminded that Rugrats and Look Who's Talking were popular, so it may not be that dumb. Evidently. And he did this through Crystal Sky Productions, which he owned alongside of actor Jon Voight. And things moved forward in 1994, coincidentally the year I was born. Finally, a movie that represented me at the time. Anyway, in 1994, Jon Voight went to a play and there he met Bob Clark, director of films like A Christmas Carol, the holiday classic, Porky's, which has been highly influential for the sex comedy genre, even if, from what I heard, not all of it may hold up, and Black Christmas, which predates Halloween to be the first ever slasher movie, truly a figure of great respect in Hollywood. So Voight said, "Hey, want to be part of my Talking Baby movie?" And so Clark brought home the script and then called back with a resounding, and I quote, "Guys, you gotta be kidding, this isn't going to work." So then Voight brought out the big guns. A proof of concept shot with a group of babies having a business meeting with their mouths moving via CGI. And seeing that technology in action is what sold Clark on the production. The original script was a little more fantastical, with an infant discovering a portal to the magical land of Baby World, a world inhabited only by babies with very few adults around. Doesn't that idea just sound like a classic? But Bob Clark wanted to rewrite it to be more realistic. Yeah, I hate it when my talking baby movie isn't realistic. He got rid of the whole story in favor of one that's more interested in corporate intrigue, with the babies being tested in a laboratory by evil rich people and scientists. The final script had 5 names attributed to it. The story was done by Stephen Paul, Francesco Matos, and Robert Grasmere, while the screenplay was by Bob Clark and Greg Michael. So now, all that's left is for Crystal Sky to bring the idea and the script to Triumph Films, a segment of Sony Pictures devoted to low-budget fare. And when they did, Triumph's president David Saunders said, "What? No." But then something else came around to change that. Babe. That movie was a technical marvel for its time for its use of mouth morphing for its animals, an effect that holds up today, and one that's similar to what Baby Geniuses would have to use. So we know the technology could work, that's good enough. This was actually the first movie to ever use this technology for human characters. So yeah, this movie was a breakthrough in special effects, although I'm not sure how often that method was ever used again. After auditions held in 6 cities, the main twin babies were played by triplets Leo, Jerry, and Miles Fitzgerald. The fact that they were triplets meant that they could work longer hours with them than they could with twins. Those babies got their own Wikipedia page for this. Talk about peaking early. Actually, maybe not, because it says that they're best known for this in one sentence at the beginning and then it's barely mentioned in the body except for a brief filmography list. Yeah, these guys were in those movies. Let's talk about their hockey careers, please. The crew said that they were surprised at how they were able to get all the baby cast to do what they wanted. They were expecting to have to adapt to how the babies wanted to act, but ended up getting it mostly the way it was written. Adult voice actors were tested for the babies' roles, but the idea was quickly scrapped in favor of child actors. The movie was shot in 50 days, ending in the March of 1997. But then the real struggle begins. Bob Clark said he knew the post-production crew would never be able to get those effects done before they were due, and sure enough, they didn't. Its release was moved from Christmas of 1997 to April 10th, 1998, and then January 29th, 1999, and then March 12th, 1999. Also, in 1997, Triumph Films shut down. Baby Geniuses would be one of the last films they produced. Triumph would later revive in 2003, just in time for the sequel, and then shut down again, appearing to be on an on and off basis. But the point is, now Baby Geniuses was owned by TriStar, who decided it should be sent straight to video. They seemed to simultaneously know exactly what they had on their hands and not know what they had. But they changed their mind just in time, and it went to theaters for that March release date. Now on to the review. I'm so glad this didn't get sent straight to video, because Baby Geniuses is a technical masterpiece that revolutionized the field of special effects forever. Those effects deserve to be seen on the big screen. Oh, you thought Avatar was stunning? You've never seen the glory of a baby saying the phrase diaper gravy, which is apparently said 4 times in this movie. And it moved me to tears each time. Anyway, as I've mentioned before, this is about a bunch of evil people, led by Kathleen Turner and Christopher Lloyd, who study a group of orphan babies in a secret facility. Turner believes that all babies actually talk in a long-lost language that only they understand, and that they also know all the secrets to the universe, until they lose that knowledge once they turn 3. They test this on screen by showing one of the babies banging on a keyboard, but when they run it through a computer, it translates into an actual song that they claim is a musical masterpiece. How any of that works is not explained. But they are training them to be even more genius so that they can translate all of their knowledge or whatever. But one of them runs away. Meanwhile, his long-lost twin is living a normal life with an average adoptive family who has like a zillion babies or something. In one scene, the family's handyman asks the twin to hand him a wrench, and he accidentally on purpose throws it at his crotch. I don't know what's worse, the little shit who threw it there or the handyman who asked for help from a baby. Anyway, surprise, the twins get switched. And from that point on, the escaped twin needs to free the newly captured twin and take down the corporation. Oh, also, the adoptive father can talk to babies. It doesn't happen until the events of this movie, but he hears baby talk one time and suddenly decides he can understand some words in there. As if they were talking in some language that he knew long ago, but it's only coming back to him now, at the most convenient time. And they tell him that shady people are experimenting on his child. Sounds legit. Also, the babies anticlimactically realize that they have the ability to hypnotize people just by talking to them. People got paid to write this. The adult actors give very wooden performances. Rotten Tomatoes says they look embarrassed to be there. I wasn't sure whether or not I got that impression, but that makes sense. Honestly, I'm surprised more people behind the camera weren't embarrassed. Bob Clark should have been embarrassed, but near the end of his life he didn't show it, as around this time his filmography was less respectable than in the 80s. Dude had no shame. I guess I'll give him credit where credit's due and say that his vision is still probably better than the Baby World one. Anyway, with grown-up acting like this, you may be thinking to yourself, just get to the point where the babies start talking. You sure about that?
Don't have a cow, Basil.
Your syntax is atrocious.
It's because you watch television all the time.
This is Dr. Kender we're talking about, not Dr. Frankenstein.
Decide.
Let's kick butt.
We're gonna train.
We're going on a train! Yeah!
Yo, yo, yo. Smoking.
Imagine 97 minutes of this. The dialogue is just completely mind-numbing. Seems simultaneously like it's written by children and by adults who are trying to be cool. Juvenile humor delivered in the same way that a little kid would say. I guess it gets credit for being realistic in that regard. And combined with the smart alecky lines of a group of old people writing to appeal to the youth of the 90s. I think one of them did an Austin Powers impression at one point. The fact that it's all kids' voices makes it even more annoying, and the worst part is that it's still better than adult voice actors would probably be, because it would be worse having to hear adults say this crap. And also the uncanniness of having adult voices come out of babies' mouths, unless they get actual voice actors who know how to sound like the Rugrats. But I don't know if this movie's smart enough to do that. There's a good chance they'll hire some other celebrity who's embarrassed to be there. Prepare yourself for Chris Pratt and Baby Geniuses. Actually, even the Rugrats voices may not work as well in live action. Maybe this whole thing was a bad idea from the start. Speaking of Rugrats, many of the later posters feature a critic blurb that calls it a live-action Rugrats. They probably used that because they were glad somebody had something nice to say about this movie. But even that isn't true. In Rugrats, they weren't baby geniuses. They were just regular dumbass babies and acted like regular dumbass babies. And that was the charm, the fact that they had adventures but still didn't know shit about the world around them. I never saw Look Who's Talking, but from what I saw, the same thing applies. These guys, on the other hand, are super intelligent and do karate and Saturday Night Fever dances. Nice going. Now these babies don't even have cuteness going for them. The humor is lowbrow and stupid and not in a fun way. Once again, the phrase diaper gravy is said 4 times. I only remember 3, but both Roger Ebert and this random guy on Letterboxd said 4, so that's multiple sources. There's also a scene where 2 men come into the family's house looking for the runaway child, and one of them finds him at the top of a staircase with a booby trap right in front of him. He says,
"Now, guess you expect me to step over this ski and then you'll jump on the end, and then the end will jump up and hit me in the gonads, and I'll scream and make a funny face and fall down the stairs. Is that right?" Well, I think you've been seeing too many bad movies, pal.
Well, I guess I'll call that last line self-awareness. But it turns out the movie actually is bad, and the baby still lures him into the trap, and he gets hit in the gonads and makes a silly face. And then almost immediately after, the other guy finds him, And he says,
You really think I'm gonna walk over that ski, and you're gonna jump on the end, and that ski's gonna come up and hit me in the gonads, and I'm gonna scream and make a funny face and fall down the stairs? I don't think so.
and he gets lured in the exact same way. You really don't want to think of a different joke? Maybe another way to get him into the trap? No, the repetition is not played for laughs or anything. They're just doing the exact same joke again. Why even make it two guys? Hey, here's a suggestion. First guy walks upstairs, gets hit in crotch. Second guy walks upstairs, overconfidently thinks he's going to sidestep the trap easily, gets hit in crotch too. There, two different pratfalls, and the first one sets up the second one perfectly. It's set up better than the original, in fact. Why couldn't you have done that? This movie is aimed at children. And only children. Really young children. I was too young to remember this movie, but I remember I was 9 going on 10 when the sequel came out. Yes, there is a sequel. Spoiler. Yes, I realized I've already mentioned this. But the point is, I saw the commercials for it, and I remember thinking to myself, wow, that looks really stupid. Even then I was too old for this, and I was too young to even remember the first one existing. So the target audience, which was presumably younger than me, isn't going to remember this one either. And it's not like it was some well-known family classic that they would have all seen on video anyway. I asked my mom if there was ever a Baby Geniuses one. She didn't even know. Where was I? Oh yeah, I was 9 and still thought this kind of thing looked stupid. So it's a very narrow window of childhood where one would enjoy this. If they do at all. Although there are points where they try to make it into something that earns its PG rating. Dude, you are not going to attract a mature audience. It's nothing major. Stuff like people saying hell or ass, guys getting hit in the crotch and having it being referred to as
The forbidden zone.
and whatever the fuck this is. Okay, I can't find a clip of it on YouTube, but I'm attached to the whatever the fuck this is line, so just imagine this. The baby genius is hiding in a stroller with a girl baby. He needs to get away, so he suggests they switch clothes. She says, at least take me to dinner first. There's also a bunch of other lines between them that are also suggestive in similar ways. I'm guessing this was Jeffrey Epstein's favorite scene. And no, I'm not saying that family movies shouldn't include actual PG content. But in this case, don't shut out your only potential audience. This isn't even a complaint, it's just... why? It's for the whole family. They put in stuff to insult the intelligence of grown-ups, too. Back to the special effects. The mouth effects look okay. Not on the level of Babe, but I can't complain. It's when the babies are supposed to do adult things like fight or dance or whatever that the effects start to look like crap. It all comes to a head in the climax where they try to fight off the bad guys in a baby-themed amusement park located under the factory, where they basically hack into everything, including sending Christopher Lloyd on a roller coaster without being strapped in until he falls out and conveniently lands in a water ride unharmed. I believe they fully meant to kill him. And it also has some robot mascots which they hacked into. That's what you get for not hiring actual workers. You know, for a job that they undeniably can do better than a machine. Now all the robots are fighting back, including a clown robot who seems to be armed only with toy chattering teeth, which is apparently enough to fend off these guys. Yeah, I know clowns are scary and all, although this clown isn't even the most terrifying mascot here, but these guys seem to be more affected by the teeth toys. What's even supposed to be going on here? Anyway, after over 90 minutes of torture, it ends with a bizarre montage of scenes from the movie set to some ballad. A lot of these scenes aren't even heartfelt things. Even out of context, they're just playing emotional music over a CGI babies doing backflips. What's even the point of ending it like this? I guess they just thought people would like the movie so much they'd want to bask in reveries of what they just watched? And it ends with one of the twins saying that he's demanding a lot of money to do the sequel, and the words, "the end," appearing around his ass. You know, a heartfelt ending worthy of that song. Also, what makes you think you'll get a sequel after that? Seriously, are you psychic? So yeah, this was widely hated by critics and audiences. Unlike its sequel, it managed to steer clear of the Razzies, but it did pick up some nominations at the Stinkers Bad Movie Awards, including a win for Worst Director. The triplets were also nominated for Worst Child Performer. Yeah, that'll show those babies. Worst Child Performer. Can you believe Bad Movie Awards get a bad rap? Hey, maybe if the director made them do just a little more cocaine, these adults would like them more. But despite the almost universal hatred, it was still a financial success, making $36.5 million on a budget of $12 million. So they ended up making a sequel 5 years later in 2004 with Super Babies, Baby Geniuses 2. I'm not going to go into the rest of this history stuff until I get to the sequel, which is still up ahead because the universe doesn't want me to be happy. But I'll just say it somehow managed to get even worse reviews, with many calling it one of the worst movies of all time. And this time it was thankfully a box office bomb, not even making back half of its budget. This was also the last movie Bob Clark directed before his death, and that's a depressing end for a once respected filmmaker. But at least the response to it ensured that there would never be any more Baby Geniuses movies. Just kidding, they made 3 more. Yeah, this is one of those episodes where there's some smaller sequel that nobody ever heard about. Okay, it all actually started out as a Baby Geniuses series, which had only aired in Italy and maybe the Far East in 2013. For every other country, the episodes of the show were edited together into 3 straight-to-DVD movies, each releasing yearly between 2013 and 2015. Jon Voight might have taken more of an interest in this franchise after the original, because though he was absent from the cast of the first movie, despite his part in getting it made, he actually has a role in every single sequel. Now that is a man with no shame. Anyway, one of the many blurbs with a 0 score on Metacritic is from Janet Maslin of the New York Times, and it reads, "One way to get through Baby Geniuses is to think about whether or not it really is the worst movie you've ever seen. Probably not, but pretty darn close." That's basically my thoughts. If not for the 365 Days movies and their terrible, boring, romantic Stockholm Syndrome stories, this would be at the very bottom of my rankings for the movies I've seen from this list, and it wouldn't even be close. The sequel is now my greatest fear. Maybe it'll be the new worst film on that list. At least then something interesting would come out of the experience. Ironic how it's a movie about baby geniuses when it's the most brain-rotting thing imaginable to be aimed at young children. Completely awful and insufferable. Please support my Patreon, link in the description.